Okay, well, thanks very much, everyone. Thanks for inviting us to give this panel discussion today. So I'm here with a very diverse and interesting panel of experts in the world of marketing and technology. I'd like to introduce you to Miya Knights, who is one of the UK's leading experts in retail technology, to Swagat Chowdry, who is the head of digital products at Diageo, to Jason Green, who I think is probably, I'm not exaggerating to say, the most experienced marketeer in this conference, with a very esteemed career with Unilever, working all over the world. He was the Chief Marketing Officer for the Pepsi-Lipton joint venture, and he is now the head of capability of marketing at Unilever. So welcome, Jason. And also Freya Gordon, who works for one of the UK's most successful, if not the most successful, D2C brand, which is Huel. And she runs the performance marketing at Huel, and is going to give you her pearls of wisdom of how she does that and what we can learn from that. So I'm going to go across the panel and give you some questions to answer. So I'd like to start with you, Miya, and if you can tell us a little bit about how is retail technology kind of evolving, and how is technology going to erase some of the retail channels that we're familiar with because of the disruption it's causing?
I don't know that it's going to erase any channels. I think it's emboldening, it's building out channels. It's actually adding a lot more complexity to the channel mix that brands have to manage. I think you guys are better off saying whether or not that's true, but that's what I'm seeing. And I think in that respect also, it's helping brands understand better how to spread their advertising dollars and their marketing dollars, where they're going to get their biggest bang for their buck. I mean, we've all seen the rise of sort of programmatic advertising over the last few years. Sprinkle a little bit of AI and predictive capability on top now, and I do think that we're going to see very much more of the same, more complexity, but really having to double down on the digital capabilities we've seen emerge in order to make the most of it.
Okay, so thanks for that, Miya. Let me move on to you, Jason. So we're living in a world now where, I mean, this whole conference, I've sat and listened to a lot of presentations about the impact of technology, performance marketing, AI is on the tip of everyone's tongue. And I even sat in a presentation yesterday on this stage where somebody said traditional brands are not going to survive into the future. Now, nobody has probably got more traditional brands than Unilever, and the narrative seems to be that influencer brands that are being built through social media are going to eat the lunch of the big brands of the likes of Unilever. So just tell us your thoughts on whether you see technology as truly disrupting the way we build traditional brands in the future.
I do think technology is going to disrupt the way we build brands. I think it already has disrupted the way we build brands. I would probably not in the space where I would agree to the statement that, you know, kind of traditional brands per se are going to be killed by influencer brands or startup brands. Not at all. I think probably some of the most important work in new marketing, leveraging technologies, is being done by traditional brands. And that's because there is a means and there is a budget to be able to do that. I think I was listening to a talk that was done by the Chief Technology Officer of WPP a little while ago, and they were talking all about AI, and he mentioned Roy Amara's law around the fact that we tend to overestimate technology in the short term and underestimate it in the long term. And I think that we're in a phase of exactly that having happened. What we're seeing in our business at the moment is that for the last 5, 6, 7 years, there's been a really, really strong drive towards performance marketing, digitally driven everything. Yeah. When you stand back and you read good quality research, whether it comes from Ehrenberg Bass in Australia, whether it comes from Peter Field and Les Binnett, the long and short of it, you know, talk to Mark Ritson, talk to any real authorities in marketing at the moment, and they really are going back to this importance of your brand being in the mind of the consumer before you start a transaction or before you start looking for a transaction. So the whole 60-40 is really, really important. And I think that we're going to, having overestimated the importance of performance marketing in the short term, we need to go back to complementing it with all of the slightly more conventional, strategic, brand-building work. And of course, the beauty of AI now is that it'll probably make it a little bit easier to do. I think I see and I'm fortunate to have worked in a lot of places around the world. The really good strategic marketing tends to be a lot more few and far between than really good performance marketing, because often it's harder. Nailing a sharp brand proposition is not so easy. Making sure that it stands out in culture and is effortless to buy, it's not so easy. Nailing the moments that matter, that make your brand relevant, it's not easy. But I think generative AI in particular will lift everyone's game in that slightly more strategic side of marketing. And I think that we should be seeing a bit of a resurgence towards that, because we probably exaggerated, maybe doubled down too much on the importance of performance marketing.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. I mean, I think that those of us who've been around some time and have been in the habit of building brands over the long term, and are buying into the Byron Sharp view of distinctive memory structures and power brands that are in people's minds, would agree that technology is definitely helping do that, but it isn't going to replace that. But let me turn to you, Freya. You're probably working on one of the UK's most successful D2C brands, and a lot of people are telling us that building D2C brands isn't really viable in the long term. I mean, it's hard to get a business model that works. So tell us a bit about, why does Huel defy gravity in that regard, and how do you use performance marketing technology to be successful?
Sure. Great question. When Huel started out 8 years ago, we didn't need much tech in the beginning. We were a novel product, one of the first to market in our category, and that kind of created a good PR buzz, organic social buzz, that viral effect. But we did tend to paid social to amplify this message. In terms of profitability, Huel's been profitable nearly every year since we've been around. And obviously, performance marketing is our bread and butter and has been since we started. I think the amazing thing about performance marketing, as opposed to more traditional kinds of media, is that it is so much cheaper. The barrier to entry is so much lower. You don't need to go and spend, tens of thousands on a big out-of-home campaign or a TV campaign. And that gives you so much more leeway room to do a kind of test and learn approach. So you try one thing, that doesn't work. Can you unpack it? Did one part of it work, but the end part not work? Was it the intro that was good? Was it the CTA that didn't work? So when you're unpacking all of these metrics, it means you can focus on the different things that have done well and make the things that haven't done so well a bit better. So, as you're going over years and years and years, you build up a really good playbook of things that are working for your brand, and this allows you to, reach new customers in the cheapest way possible. So, for us, performance marketing is still king. I agree with Jason that traditional forms of media may have more of a resurgence. I think all brands probably go through this kind of life cycle. So maybe that is in Huel's future, but for now, performance marketing is still working well for us.
Brilliant, thanks, Freya. As I said to you before, my prediction is that you guys at Huel are going to have to get into big brand building in the near future, because Huel is probably reaching the limits of what it can achieve through performance marketing. But I would say that because I'm an old marketing dinosaur. So let me come to you, Swagat. You're head of digital products at Diageo, and Diageo probably couldn't. There is no more kind of legacy business than a spirits business like Diageo. But you guys are embracing tech in a big way, and you're leading that. Just tell us a bit about your predictions of how the new technologies that are emerging are going to change the way that we market products, and the interface between performance marketing and big brand building, and how do you see the future? I heard you talk about AI earlier on, so maybe you can build on that a little bit.
I think all of our predictions will be equally good, because everyone follows similar source every day. But I am a big fan of a concept called Simplex. What's happening in the model world is that technology is helping us answer very complicated questions in a very simple way. And I think that's the way to look forward to any of the solutions, and that's where it will disrupt. Technology has been there with us and programmatic and everything for the last decade at least, if not longer. But what's happening in the new world is that we in a simple way, ask a very simple business question, and that gets converted into a very complex answer. we've got a little taste of it over the last couple of months where, I know that text to images has become really popular with everyone personally, professionally, whichever way. But that's definitely something to look at. Some of you would have seen, I saw it on, on LinkedIn, someone posted that, put a tissue paper of a website design, and the website design can be done from that with AI. So I think those are the kind of things which will really, really disrupt. I think the core remains to think that, and we're talking earlier about the same thing, is that are we just doing technology because of the sake of technology? Or is the bigger opportunity to understand, is there a problem that we are solving? Or there is a bigger opportunity that we can solve with it?
Right, thanks a lot, Swagat. I'm going to come back to you again, Miya. Technology, online and offline retail are kind of in some kind of weird synergy these days. And one of the reasons why people say that D2C brands struggle is because ultimately they don't have the offline presence, right, which gives them that physical presence, which ultimately has been the way we've built brands in CPG over the last 100 years or so. Tell us a little bit about how you think technology is going to bridge the gap between online and offline, and what brands should think about in terms of living in that kind of grey area between online and offline.
Yeah, good question. Well, I noticed Huel in a few stores now, right?
Yeah.
I think let's debunk a couple of myths here. When we talk about D2C and we talk about e-com pure play, that to me is where the problem is if it's online only. It's really hard to make a profit selling just online. Love it or loathe it as a word, omni-channel exists to kind of talk about that grey area where we as customers, we're channel agnostic, we don't see channels, so I should be able to have exactly the same level of brand experience as I do online versus in the physical store. So consistency is absolutely key there. I think technology can certainly help with that. In terms of bridging the gap, what we're hearing more and more about now is augmented reality. Not so sure about virtual reality. I think if we mentioned the metaverse up here, people would probably hold their heads in their hands because that's had its day in terms of buzzwords. But I really think we're going to see some interesting developments in regards to particularly when we talk about offline retail, what retailers are doing to try and mobilize retail media on their websites and in their stores. I think you're going to see a lot more innovation in regards to the kinds of creatives that you guys can bring to bear online and then bring to life in the store as well. And so for those consumers that have the app, happy to pay, scan and go, happy to check themselves out, getting on the Wi-Fi in the store, they're the kind of prime digital savvy customers that brands should be targeting for this kind of blended reality marketing and advertising capability. And I will just finally say in regards to that it's absolutely key that I think just talking to what Jason and Freya were mentioning, that you make sure that you've got that above the line execution where we've been talking about brands with a purpose, so you have a purpose. I would say the technology is there to give you the data that tells you what your customers want from you, and you turn that back into your brand's purpose and then use that to fill out what is below the line in terms of performance marketing, personalization. And it's in those cases that I think being able to add a personal touch to what people see offline after you've become part of their consideration set in regards to the fact that 70% of every single retail sale is being influenced by digital right now. You need to make sure you've got that mix right. So it's not just online to offline, but it's also top above the line and below the line as well, and how technology is going to help you execute on that front as well.
Brilliant. Yeah, thanks a lot, Mike. I think what I'm hearing you say is that ultimately it's not so much about where we're going with offline, but online. It's how offline is going to be digitized and how
absolutely
and how the technology is going to make the offline experience so much more seamless and almost a virtual experience, even though it's physical.
I mean, I would say that you can't put the digital genie back in the bottle, and after 3 years post-COVID, We're all more than willing to take our mobile phones out when we walk into a store now. It used to be that we could use Google to navigate to the nearest store that had a product and we put it away. But now we've got our mobiles out. That's a real opportunity for brands to build affinity, to double down on the consideration step, but also to do something innovative and interesting that might even personalize the experience for you, give you an offer. If you get the person to identify themselves in store, use that information to sell them more of what they want.
Yeah, but that's a great segue into my next question for you, Jason. So essentially the whole reality of digitization of the retail experience and the buying experience is about it's not about, but it generates reams of data, which is kind of the lifeblood for brands to figure out how to activate their consumers. And one of the things that we see is that many companies, especially big companies, are struggling with their kind of CDP, their CRM. How do you take that data and turn it into a useful marketing tool so that the brand can be, omnipresent in the digital space? Now, again, I'm not going to ask you how you do that, but what I am going to ask you is, in a company like Unilever, which is one of the great marketing companies on the planet, how are you building the capabilities for the next generation of marketeers to be experts in CRM, CDP, AI, all these things that are going to be critical and core skills for them?
Firstly, I would say that it's about doing everything. You can't just do one thing now. One of the most terrifying and yet brilliant things about technology over the last 10 years is it's made our jobs just so much more complex. And there are so many more specialisms or specific segmented areas of marketing. It's about the genius of the and, not the tyranny of the or. You've got to do it all. And when we look, therefore, at the complexity of building capabilities and skills in a business that is relatively large and has a very big footprint around the world, one of the things that I'm interested to do is to differentiate between genuine skill build versus knowledge provision. I think a lot of companies, a lot of people that I talk to at the moment, they think that if they have a talk about something digital, they have a talk about AI, then, job done. And everyone can just go off and do it. But it's not the reality. You've got to start with clever thinking around who do you have in the organization, and do they have those skills to do those specialist jobs? And do they have the training to do those specialist jobs in the environment in which you put them? Because again, there's a lot of kind of off-the-shelf stuff that you can buy, but it doesn't necessarily help your brilliant people that you've spent a lot of time recruiting do their jobs so that the business impact is better in their environment. So it's a challenge, and we've got to be quite. Everyone has limited resource, and you've got to try and identify those areas that you really want to focus on, and make sure that you provide depth knowledge and general knowledge, depth skill learning programs to do that. And for that, we need partners that we work very closely with. We need to leverage different technology platforms, different technology opportunities. But when push comes to shove, it needs investment. And having had the happy benefit of managing to enjoy a career in marketing in many different countries of the world and meet up with lots of smaller companies and big companies, one of the areas that I think that we tend to underestimate, given the fact that everyone's P&L is stretched, is this investment in people, this investment in capabilities, this investment in know-how. And we kind of think that if we just sort of, when we start up a company, we invent a brand, all of a sudden we're like marketing specialists about it. No, you're not. And so, you have to get deep and you have to get into the nitty-gritty of doing everything. You also have to frame a culture and a philosophy of marketing. I feel that, marketing is in a way lost its way, and everyone's forgotten the importance of all of those strategic brand building skills. And I think that we've got to invest in them, and it's got to be specific to the skill areas that are absolutely required, and it's got to be comprehensive. So it doesn't come cheap, and it is worth investing in.
Brilliant, thanks, Jason. I think the truth is the future is unwritten with regard to how brands are going to embrace technology and how we're going to train our people. I think the great thing about an event like this is you can just feel the amount of new ideas and new tech solutions which are emerging. There are some wonderful startups here doing crazy stuff, which a lot of us, big brand marketeers should be looking at very carefully, because we have no idea who's going to be eating our lunch in the next 12 months. Maya, I'm getting wrapped up, but if you've got one quick thing to say.
I was just going to say, it's the questions you ask of the data, and you need the domain experts that know the business, that know what the purpose of the business is, the brand is, to be able to ask those questions. All the tools in the world can help you, but you really need to ask the right
One thing I'm learning about AI is it's the question you ask it that's most important, right? So look, I apologise to the other panel members, but we are getting wrapped up. It was very ambitious to cover that in 20 minutes. I wanted to take questions from the floor, but I don't think we've got time. But I'm around, and the panel are around, so by all means grab us if you've got a burning question. But thanks a lot to MadFest for inviting us, and thanks to the panel. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.